Well, hello and welcome everybody to Do You Need Accommodation for Your Visa? This webinar where you'll find out everything you need to know with Casa Portuguesa. Tonight we have Gilda Pereira, normally of AEI or I, and a partner of Casa Portuguesa, Daniel dos Reis, our favorite lawyer, of course, Expats Portugal. Gilda, good to see you again. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
And I think you're in a very nice location there at the offices, I think, of Reis Pellicano in the center of Lisbon.
Yes, in the center of Lisbon.
Okay, brilliant. Let's say hello to Daniel as well. Good evening to you, Daniel. Olá, boa noite.
Hello, boa noite, Carl. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Always good to see you. Is it very wet in Lisbon this evening? Are those 300 days of sunshine, are they behind us for the time being?
Yeah, it seems like it. It's pouring cats and dogs all over the place, and the city has been a bit tied with traffic. So it's not good days in Lisbon, but in 2 or 3 more days, it will get back to sunny old Lisbon, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right. And that's right, isn't it? When it rains in Lisbon, people take to their cars. So the traffic it does choke up a little bit. Maybe that's why Gilda's still at the office waiting for everybody to go home. Let's go back to you, Gilda.
And also because Daniel has a wonderful view here.
Oh, really?
So, yeah, I came for a coffee and I stayed here just to watch the view.
Oh, okay. Can you describe that view? Because I think we love the Lisbon skyline, but tell us a bit, can we have a pen portrait of that view from Reis Pellicano's HQ?
I could share some images, but that would take a bit of time. Let me see if I can scramble something from my phone, and then I'll share it to the screen in the middle of the meeting.
And we could also edit that into the video as well, which will, of course, be on our channel at Expats Portugal later on. It'd be lovely to see that view. So, Gilda, Casa Portuguesa. Now, I remember when we've talked before about Casa Portuguesa, people thought you were a bit crazy when you first had this idea. Is that right?
Yes, it is.
Right. Okay. So give us the backstory, if you will.
Okay. So first, when I created back in 2014, it was all about helping people to come to Portugal. And then soon I realized that it was not easy for them to find a place, because although in Portugal it is easy for Portuguese to go to a real estate agency or to look on the internet, for the expats it's not that easy to know where to start and how to do it. So I had this idea to create Casa Portuguesa. It's a place where you go and you find someone that will help you in all the different real estate agencies to find what you want. So and everybody would tell me, Gilda, you are crazy because no one is going to pay you just to find a place. But the thing is that then I created Hey, and everybody wanted to pay me to find a place. And I said, this is my idea a long time ago. So now I want to split the waters, and my idea is going to be launched. And so it started to be.
Fantastic.
And yes. And today what we do with Casa Portuguesa is that we have like 2 different packages. One to search for a house to rent, and another one to search for a house to buy.
Okay, excellent stuff. And we'll find out more about the specifics of the plans. I just want to find out if Daniel was one of those people who supported or didn't support the idea at the beginning, because he certainly does now. What did you think, first of all, Daniel?
I thought it was a wonderful idea. Probably my guess was that Casa Portuguesa, well, not my guess, it would complete the circle, because you do have one company that does the migration part, but people need housing once they arrive to Portugal, or even previously nowadays, as the consulates are requesting rental agreements at a distance. And if you're doing this at a distance, you might as well just get support from someone local that knows the property market here. And that's the job of Casa Portuguesa, offering accommodation for people that are doing this or at a distance, or if they are here, they're not too confident or just don't have the time to do property search. So this is the niche, this is the markets that Casa Portuguesa will tap in.
Well said, well said. And Jeff is saying we love Casa Portuguesa and EI, and Gilda, fantastic service. No doubt Daniel as
Thank
well.
you.
Cheers, cheers, Jeff, for that testimonial already. And yes, before we really get into the specifics, Casa Portuguesa, of course, in case anybody is in any doubt, Portuguese house, but also a classic track by Amalia, I believe. Is that right? People should look that up as well. It's a classic Portuguese tune, isn't it? It belongs in the DNA of Portuguese music.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. And before we move on, with reference to EI, just in case somebody hasn't looked at the internet for the last 2 years, EI, your company, 98% success rate with visa applications, Gilda. And as we found out on Migration Tuesday, which we do at 9 o'clock every Tuesday evening, 100% when it goes to appeal. That's a pretty good hit rate, Gilda.
Yes.
One you can. Is that what you want to say? Yes.
Yeah, we never got to deny, and Daniel knows.
Yep.
He works with us for a long time. We never got to deny to an appeal.
Brilliant.
Yep.
Brilliant.
Well, it starts with the policy that Gilda has is she only accepts situations that she knows that they do fit the criteria for the visa.
Yes.
So if someone wants a visa but doesn't fill in the criteria, then Gilda will not accept it. So she is willing to fight the consulates if they do any mistakes, if you need to do an appeal. And the appeals, as they are decided in Lisbon and not in the consulates abroad, they will look into the law. They will see that the applicant fulfills the legal criteria, and they do need to abide by the law, and they will approve it. So that's why Gilda has this great rate of success, because once she is able to, if a visa is able to be approved, she will do all efforts and go all lengths. If it doesn't, she will have the straightforward honesty to say, well, I'm afraid that I will not be able to take this case. So that's the reason for Gilda's success.
Sounds absolutely the right way to do it.
I didn't hire Daniel, okay? Daniel, I'm not going to pay you any fee.
an unsolicited testimonial there. Fantastic. Well, that's great. You couldn't wish for better support there, Gilda. So let's get into the specifics of Casa Portuguesa. How important is it I suppose the question I've got is the timing. Clearly, you know, there are criteria that need to be matched for the D7 and other visas, and accommodation is part of that. Should people engage with Casa Portuguesa from the get-go, but especially given at the moment that it's so hard to find accommodation, certainly in the capital and increasingly around other parts of the country? So these are like sister companies, aren't they, working side by side? But how should people engage, and in what timescale? That's for you, Gilda.
How should people engage?
No, when in terms of timescale of getting started with their visa application process, how soon? Because, you know, some people are going to be thinking it's all right, I can get somewhere in Portugal to live. I might leave it a little bit late, and some people might be a bit too keen and start a bit too early. What's the optimum timing for engaging with Casa Portuguesa so that they can find the accommodation for the D7 requirement?
If they already have an appointment, they can usually, when they have an appointment, they know they need to have a rental agreement for that appointment. Mm-hmm. So, and then we work with that deadline.
Okay. So yes, in line with the requirement to show up with your lease in hand, obviously, and in good time for doing that. Where in Portugal can you help people? As in local?
Everywhere. In the islands is a little bit more, a little bit harder, especially in Azores.
Okay, all right. But you know that Jerry and I are very happy to be flown out to any of the islands to look at property for people. And Astrid as well, I suspect, to look at property for you over there. So we've got coverage of all of the Portuguese districts and the autonomous regions as well. How does that process work? I mean, is it a matter of people saying, I don't know where I want to live, can you help me? Or I do know where I want to live, and can you go find me a place in this particular city? Typically, how is that working out?
So many people don't know where they want to live, and sometimes they say, okay, I have this budget and I want to be 1 hour from the airport, and then we start making more questions. Like we have a questionnaire like, do you have pets? Do you have some requirements? And then we make suggestions about the budget, and that meets the budget and the requests. And then we suggest the places, and then if they agree, we send some links, and then if they agree, we go and make the visits in person.
Okay, so it's like, you know, those charity collection boxes where you put a coin in it and it rolls around the side and gradually ends up in the middle. That's how the search is working here, isn't it? You're kind of funneling people towards their ultimate destination, literally before the penny drops and they find the place they want to go to. Typically, though, where are you finding most properties for most people? Is it in Lisbon, generally speaking?
No.
Oh,
no,
okay.
Not at all. It's in the central and in north.
Oh, okay.
Porto, Braga, and also in the Algarve.
Right. Okay. So yeah, because Melissa's asking a very interesting question. I'm wondering how housing is looking in the north. I sense a little bit of a trend of people looking beyond Lisbon now. And you mentioned Braga, Porto. What other cities are showing promise in the north of Portugal in this way for people finding property?
Povo do Varzim, Guimarães, and Braga. Lots of people are looking for places in Braga.
Okay, so Melissa, the news is good. I'm wondering how housing is looking in the north. Very good by the sound of it. Tell us more, Gilda, about the process. Some links are a way of people finding out some more, and those would be general real estate links, I take it. But your team, if somebody's showing particular interest and they've narrowed that search down to a particular part of Portugal, your team will go along, meet with the real estate agents, the estate agents, and will take pictures and videos and give people a much better idea of what's going on as their boots on the ground, right?
Yes.
Right. Okay. And what sort of package of materials will you be sending people?
We will send photos and a little report about the area and about the condition of the house.
Okay.
The conservation of the house, yeah. All
right, according to people's specification. On that note, I mean, a lot of people might be saying, "Oh, what a nice view." We're talking about nice views of Lisbon before. I think that probably does come up for a lot of people. Heating, well insulated, air conditioning, or a mixture of the two. What typically are the things that people are looking for, and what are some of the things that people forget in their specification if they're moving into Portugal?
Well, the heating is something that most people forget to ask because they assume that it's included, but then it's not. So it's something that we have to tell people. Sometimes people want to move to the center of Lisbon, but then we need to inform about the noise, because they want to be in certain neighborhoods, but we must say that it's very noisy over there. And about the pets.
Yes. Okay. Tell us about pets, because a lot of people do want to bring the furry part of the family over with them, obviously. And there is an assumption, I think, and Daniel might have a comment on this, that landlords are not allowed to discriminate against people with pets. I'm not sure if that's actually true, is it? I don't know who wants to take that. Maybe you would, Daniel.
Well, basically, that was a big discussion in the Portuguese law, because this was introduced recently, that there were some people that don't want their property just scratched by dogs or cats, and they were introducing in the rental agreements that you're not allowed to have pets. And this is something that should be considered as non-written in the contract, if it is. So it's against the law, basically. There's a lot of people that still do it, that still put it in the contracts, but this is something that is not up to the law. Of course, you may have some limitations exceptions with the condominium regulations in some places that if everyone agrees that the property shouldn't have pets, this is a different scenario and a different situation because it's the regulation from the condominium. But otherwise, just a normal property owner impeding the tenants from having pets, this is not something that should occur. If the pet does break something, if they scratch the floors, if they simply just get the apartment with some damages, the tenant will need to or repair or pay for the repairs inflicted by the damages produced by the pets. That's basically how it should operate.
That's great. So basically a favorable scenario for people wanting to bring pets to Portugal.
Correct.
Which is great to hear. Okay. And there's a little room for challenge there if you get a knockback.
Well, the thing that my reasoning is, if a landlord is putting this in a contract and you do sign the contract, even knowing that this is against the law, you do know that you will cause some friction later down the line once the property owner does find out that you have pets. So if this is an issue for the property owner, I would probably try to advise someone searching for a unit to go somewhere else, because this will just cause a lot of friction and a lot of noise in the relationship between the tenant and the landlord. And this is not the desired outcome, I would say. Although it's not, it shouldn't be inserted in contracts.
Okay, well said. Thank you for that little caveat there. And any other tips like that? Because people can overlook things and assume things. We're grateful to find out about those tonight from both you, Daniel, and
well, there's a lot of crazy practices at the current moment in the market. There's a lot of people asking for 1 year in advance, and this is not what the Portuguese Civil Code states. So but as the market is quite heated up, people will just do it because at the end of the day, they will need to find a place to live and to relocate to Portugal. So we've seen a few rental agreements that are more than just, they are too imposing, let us just keep it nicely, into the tenants, and people sometimes do accept it because they are just a bit desperate. And again, having good advice on this can do the difference, I would say.
And having somebody working for you, right, Gilda, who can push back on this side of the water, which you do in many capacities for people as their representative over here. That's important.
Yes.
Well, whilst we're talking about pets, that's an interesting point, Suzanne, who actually says earlier on, I missed this, Gilda. Gilda looks lovely today. Nothing about you and me, Daniel, but anyway, let's go to what Suzanne's comment about. In the US, one often pays a pet rent in addition to the base rent. It's included in the lease. It's good because it's clear that the landlord knows about the pets and agrees to it. So that would be one way of managing it, I suppose, but it's not absolutely necessary, is it, from what you say, Daniel?
Yeah, it's not necessary, and it shouldn't be inserted in the contracts. Although, if you want to disclose that you have pets and the landlord states, well, in this case, I would feel a bit more comfortable if the deposit is higher to eventually pay for the compensation that the pet causes. I wouldn't see any problem with that, for instance.
Okay, excellent. All right. Any other questions? Please get them in, including, you want some reassurance about bringing your pets over, obviously. We knew it, Gilda, didn't we? The Digital Nomad visa. We're 22 minutes in, and obviously somebody was going to want to ask about the Digital Nomad visa. Can we do that? Will the new Digital Nomad visa being released at the end of October also require a lease accommodation as part of the application, like the D7? It's probably a question worth factoring in this evening, because Casa Portuguesa can help in that regard.
Yes, but the fact is we don't know yet.
Okay, it doesn't stop us asking, though. We will keep asking until we know, won't we, about this? And
let me explain. We don't know because the law is not clear about that. It doesn't say that it needs to be a rental agreement.
Yes.
Let's see what the consulates are going to say about that.
Okay, so what,
So we need to wait for what the consulates are going to state about that.
Howard, sorry, we can't be clear on that, but we're on it. And, join us every Tuesday for an update on that from 9 till 10 Portuguese time. So with these requirements for the lease for accommodation, there have been recent changes. I think it might be worth focusing on that a little bit, Gilda, the recent changes and also other things people need to know, because some people might like to do it on the cheap or take a few shortcuts. One thing, for example, and I'm sure there are other things you can tell us, is if the lease is not registered with Finanças, that's a red light, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And that can be a problem when they go to SEF afterwards, and even to issue the visa right now, because the consulates are really asking for the proof that the contract is registered at the tax office.
Okay.
Any consulates are asking for that proof, and then if the consulate doesn't ask, when you go to SEF, they will ask for sure.
Okay, and so let's be really clear about that. What that means is your landlord, the homeowner who is renting to you, has the agreement lodged with the fiscal authority, Finanças, here in Portugal, and that relationship is in some way facilitated by Finanças as well, isn't it? So you pay your money, and the financial authority knows all about that, and a receipt will be issued, and there is a record of your rental payments through the Finanças system, which you'll also be able to see on the portal, right?
Yes, but you need to. I'm going to explain something that happened this week.
Okay.
A client of ours was about to close a rental agreement, which was, for instance, 800 euros. And then when he was to sign the rental agreement, the landlord said, but if we do this under the table, which means don't make the registration of the contract, I will make you 700. And then he wanted to sign the agreement under the table. And then we called him and said, no, you cannot do that, because then you are going to save, and this is not going to work.
Yes.
And he said, but I want to save this money. No, it's not going to work like that.
Yes, it could. I mean, that would be penny foolish, and
Yes.
And yeah, you want to be pound wise and not penny foolish, don't you? Or is it the other way around? But anyway, you do not want to be going under the table with anybody. I thought you were going to say he literally crouched down and went under the table to sign the agreement, but no, we get what you mean with that particular idiom there. So if it's tempting, isn't it? But it's not going to work.
Yeah, it's not going to work.
All right, and that is the official validation, is the rental agreement being registered with the Finanças office, with whom you'll be having other dealings as well, no doubt, if you're moving to Portugal. So you might as well get used to it there and then. The specifics of the lease agreement, what else is required, Gilda, so people know? 12 months, obviously.
Yeah, 12 months. What else, Daniel?
Finanças, 12 months. Is that all they're going to be looking for?
In terms of the consulate, well, usually yes, I think so. Isn't that right? The consulate, they would like to see if the contract is an ongoing contract, so something for 2 or 3 months is not sufficient, and the registry in the tax authorities is something that is that they do verify. The other legal requirements, they don't care that much, because that's between the parties, and they should look into the legality of the contract. So those are the 2 things to look at. The rest, the consulate simply and SEF simply will not care. They will want to check if taxes are being paid. Apart from that, they will be happy with accepting any type of contract.
Okay, excellent. Yes. We know where the priorities lie with that. So that's great. I think we're going to get into some specifics on regions now. And this will be quite subjective, of course. This will be Daniel and Gilda's views of other parts of Portugal. I'm sure they have their favorite parts of the country. And we'll have an overview from customers and clients who are moving all over the country. Barak, we are thinking of Coimbra. How is housing in that district? Mainly looking for 2 or 3 bedroom apartments. And I think a few people here tonight might want to chip in on this. You mentioned noise before, Gilda, which is something, if you visit Coimbra at a certain time of year, you're thinking, this is a lovely city. I'll have a nice quiet walk by the river. and I'll live downtown, and we'll have a lovely time going to the restaurants. And if you've chosen that part of the year where there aren't any students around, you'll get a very different idea. This is why it's so important, is that your team is saying, hold on a minute, yes, you had a nice time there on that particular evening at that particular time of year, but it is hellishly noisy at other times of year, right?
Yes.
So we can say that to Barak. They do like to drink and celebrate, the students in, well, although this is true of all, tell me about this, Daniel and Gilda. Would this be true of all university towns across Portugal? Is this something to be aware of, that you might not want to put yourself in the student district unless you do like partying and drinking all night?
Well, I would say Coimbra is special on that because it's really a university town. So if you don't like a lot of noise in parties, well, probably Coimbra is not a good choice. You do have quieter parts of Coimbra, but still, if you want to go downtown into the old part of Coimbra, then it's lovely to visit. I do love the city, but do consider the noise because it's rampant. But during the weekend is really quiet because all the students will go back home. So it's usually busier and noisier at Thursdays, the traditional night out for students in Coimbra. So yeah,
that is gold dust advice for somebody who might have otherwise ended up in hoping for a peaceful life in Coimbra on Thursday night. Thank you for that. John Monge, thank you for this. In general, how long will a property have to be leased before we are clear to move there? I'm not sure what that means, but it could refer to this difficulty some people have with timing. You've got to have the lease ready for your appointment. So you might think, okay, I don't want to miss this opportunity. I don't want to mess up at my appointment. How long can that gap be, if that's what John is talking about, between securing a property and this refers to what I was asking you earlier on, really, about the sequencing, Gilda. How do you help people not pay rent for somewhere they're not living in, if you see what I mean? It's a tricky one, isn't it? It's a tricky problem to resolve.
For not paying rent while they are not there.
Well, yes, because they something comes up. Your team has helped them find somewhere that they like the look of, and they have an opportunity to sign for it. But they don't know necessarily exactly when they're going to be moving, do they? So how do you what's the best way to manage that?
That's a risk. That's a risk that they have to take.
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
You see what Martin was saying the other day, that the visa didn't came out and the rental agreement was almost expiring.
Wow. Okay. It can be as bad. It can be as lengthy as that, can it?
Yeah.
My goodness. Okay. Well, that's tough. And by the sound of it, not a lot that can be done about it.
No.
No. Okay.
Only if you want to give up the visa, you can always. Daniel, can you help me? You can always give notice 4 months
to revoke
before.
The contract. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. To revoke the contract. Before. Yeah, that's a possibility, but it's a double-edged situation because at the end of the day, you need a rental agreement with to request the visa. The visa does take some time to be executed, to come out, to be usable, and then you'll have some time that you just need to pack and move to Portugal. So a good 4 or 5 months may elapse that you'll just be paying rent, unfortunately, and you will not be able to access the property and use it. But Gilda, are any consulates accepting promissory rental agreements?
No, I was just talking about that. Things just came worse and worse because before they were accepting promissory rental agreements, and we had some time to play there. And then they were accepting rental agreements that would start in the future. Like, okay, you find some place to rent, but you negotiate to start in 3 months' time. But now they only accept rental agreements that are already in force and that are already registered at the tax office. So things just became more and more demanding.
Yep, so true. When we first had these conversations, Gilda, you could show an Airbnb contract, couldn't you? Back in the day, back in the good old days.
Yeah.
And I think, referring to what you were saying before, Daniel, as well, with landlords making unreasonable requests of a year up front and massive deposits. I mean, the market is reflecting this situation as well, isn't it? So in many ways, people are in a challenging position here. If you found somewhere you like, it probably is a good idea to secure it, right? Rather than run the risk, because there are so many other people looking as well.
And there's a lot of Portugal has a lot of vacant properties. One of the problems that there's a lot of landlords that just they don't feel like renting the properties is because of the eviction system that we have in Portugal. If someone is not paying the rent, it's quite difficult to evict the tenant. And it's a lengthy process. You'll end up spending time and money in a court. Therefore, some people just, they don't bother. So the pool of properties available in the market just it decreases because if you own 2 or 3 properties, you might consider renting one of them. But if you just consider that you'll may find some bad tenants, you may lose money in the process. It's not as appealing as some people may think. So this is one of the other reasons that property rents are going up. The pool, it could be higher, and this could be, for instance, people could be motivated tax-wise to rent out properties, but this is not the case. And if you see the taxation for the rents, it's 28%, and there's not a lot of people that do feel motivated in having a property rented for 20 years, and for 20 years you would have a reduction on the tax rates, but still they should indeed reduce the tax rates for rental properties, so more properties would be put in the market. And definitely we need a reform on evictions, so more properties are indeed rented out.
Yeah, and it's kind of counterintuitive, isn't it? Certainly for the North American and certainly the Brits coming to Portugal and looking around thinking, there's a lot of empty property here. It shouldn't be that difficult to get a rental. It doesn't really work like that, I'm afraid to say.
Yeah.
Looks like Chris, John, if that's what you meant with your question, great. If it wasn't, do let me know. And of course, anyone can ask questions more specifically, personally, when we go to the open mic part a little bit later on after the recording is concluded. Chris and Barack might be neighbours, though we are mainly looking at the Santa Clara on the other side of the river. That's a good move in Coimbra, I would say, or by the Alma shopping centre. Sorry to be so niche and specific, but people like this sort of information. And as well, wanted Tomar, but thought Coimbra might be better for the kids. I would say, Tomar's not a bad city for kids, is it?
I would say it's a good city. I like Tomar. It's a really small Portuguese city, so I like it. At least for in my opinion. I don't know about Gilda, but I do like it.
Don't rule it out, Chris.
I have kids, and I would prefer Coimbra for kids.
There you go. Okay, the inside track there from Gilda, mother. And do the rental fees for condo units also include the condo fees? Great question, Howard. I.e. for the common areas, can you ask if the neighbours in the building, can you also ask if the neighbours in the building you are considering have pets? There's a couple of great questions in there. That may be to do with allergies, of course, or noise. Let's start with that last one. Can you ask if your neighbours have got pets? Could you ask such a question?
You can, and I think you should. If you do have allergies, or if you're a bit more noise sensitive, I would definitely ask if your neighbors have pets, because if, for instance, is downtown Lisbon in old properties, the noise insulation is poor, and if you have a dog barking every day, then it's going to be difficult for you to work if you work at home. And we had several complaints of people wanting to leave the house that they were, and they would just send us the contract, and they would be a bit desperate, stating, well, this dog, unfortunately, it doesn't shut up. What can I do? And this is a bit of a difficult situation, because it might be a motive to break the contract, but it's that fine line where you are that this may be decided in court. Of course, the landlord will want the rents and the deposit and all that, and the tenant will want to get away with as less money spent as possible. So asking if people do have pets and if they bark, it would be something that I would definitely, as a tenant, and if I was noise sensitive, I would definitely do.
How do you ask and who do you ask? I mean, Gilda, your Casa Portuguesa team, do they provide that sort of information?
You know that sometimes we have clients that, as Daniel said, that are very noisy sensitive, and you know, like they made us record the sound of the windows opening.
Really?
Or yes, or recording the sounds of the cars going into the garage to see how much noise does it make. It goes to that point.
Well, what a fantastic level of service you're offering, obviously. Brilliant. Well, that's good to know. The other part of that question from Howard was, do rental fees generally reflect the condo fees as well? You want to be specific about that. What's the general rule?
Well, condo fees are, or the condominium fees are paid by the property owner. Unless otherwise stated in the contract, this is by default paid by the property owner, as well as property tax. So the municipal tax that you pay every year, this is the responsibility of the property owner and not the tenant. So basically, in the rent, all these expenses should be more or less included.
Okay, and similarly with the council tax, the renter doesn't pay
the municipal tax. Yeah, the council tax. It's paid by the property owner and not by the tenant.
And definitely one of the benefits of renting. Very good. Okay, Linda asks, if you're sharing an apartment, does the lease have to be in your name? How does that work? And do Portuguese leases generally want everybody on the lease, or is it the principle of the household?
Gilda, do you want to address that?
She's letting you do all the legal ones, Daniel, I noticed.
Yeah.
Well, basically, if it's for a visa, I would put everyone that is requesting a visa, because as Gilda was explaining, consulates are not making anyone that wants to arrive to Portugal lives easy. If you're sharing a house and a visa is not an issue, I would, as a co-tenant, would like to have the other person in the contract. And this is because of liability issues. If the other tenant defaults, if he is in the contract, you can state to the property owner, well, my share of the rent is paid, I paid my part, so I'm not defaulting. Go and address the situation with the other tenants that you do have. So I would have 2 or 3 people in the contract, and that's my general advice, is a question of liability and people paying the rent in due time.
But you make a great point, and it's a good question, Linda. Gilda, this is important, isn't it? Get everybody on the lease who needs to be spotted at the consulate or embassy appointment. Okay, so that's the thing to do there, Linda. Trevor, thank you very much. Casa Portuguesa made sure our lease was registered with the finances and made our CEF appointment smooth. Good to know. Thank you very much for that. And shout out to Carolina Muralha and Casa Portuguesa for helping us find an apartment in Estoril. Lucky you, Estoril. She was Casino Royale, of course, Estoril. She was so diligent and professional with every aspect. Highly recommended. That's great to know, Gilda. And we'll find out how you work in terms of fees and so on in a little while too. We've done that one, Linda, thank you very much. How bad are the deposits? Now, ideally, in the law, Daniel, it should be 3 months, should it not, with the deposits? It's the first month, the last month, and a month worth of deposit. Doesn't always work out like that. You were saying some are asking for more these days.
Yeah, and one thing that some people struggle to grasp in terms of what is the norm, the custom here in Portugal, is that you're paying the rent in advance. So in January, you're paying the rent of February, and so on and so forth. And this is something that it's usually not as well accepted if you're coming from abroad, because the majority of the countries, I would say, in January, you're paying the January rent, but this is not the norm. This is not the custom here in Portugal. So don't, if someone presents a contract with that, that's the usual custom here in Portugal.
Okay, so it should be 3 months as your deposit, first month, last month, and the deposit month itself. Shout out to Carolina, of course, we've done that one as well, but also Joanna Neves. Olá, Gilda. Thanks to Joanna Neves for finding us this wonderful apartment in Lisbon as well. Why, says Jonathan, 12 months? I was told the law says the rental agreement must be for the duration of the visa, which is initially 4 months. Once you get the permit, it's 2 years. But your contract for your lease, for your accommodation needs to be 12, right? That is the law, Gilda.
Yes, it is the law. For habitational purpose, it needs to be one year.
Yep, there you go, Jonathan. That's the law on this, despite the fact, yes, of course, the 4-month permit and the subsequent periods thereafter. Chris, showing no understanding of people who want to live in university towns. That's a bit harsh, Chris, but it is true, to be fair. If you go to a university town, you must expect a little bit of noise, especially at the beginning of term as well, and probably the end of term when they're celebrating. How about, says Jonathan, coming back on that earlier question, how about if you intend to buy a home fairly soon after arriving? The soonest you can give notice on a 12-month tenancy is 4 months, and then the landlord can insist upon another 4 months notice period. So you are effectively tied to 8 months. Is that right, Daniel, by Jonathan's work?
9 months.
Yeah, that's it. I would say 9 months. I would say 9 months.
Okay.
That's it, because it's a third of the contract that at least the tenant will need to fulfill, and then the notice period is 120 days. So if you do sum the 2 periods, it's 9 months.
Okay, and that said, human to human, people do leave contracts, don't they, and find other people. Given that it's a very desperate situation, it's not going to be that difficult for the landlord to find somebody, or even the tenant to find their replacement as well. So these things needn't be 9 months, but by law, it's likely to be 9 months.
Well, if it's negotiated with the landlord, totally all right, as long as the two parties agree and they can reduce that deadline. Usually it's a good idea for the tenant. Well, if you say, well, I have this friend that wants to live in Lisbon or in Porto, so you can assume my rental agreement, they will be more than happy, and then transmit the rental agreement, because otherwise if your name is in the rental agreement and your friend ends up not paying the rent, you will be in a serious problem. So it's my recommendation on that is that first this should be approached nicely with the landlord, and solutions should be offered, and at least a situation that the landlord will see that he will lose some money, but at the same time the tenant is doing an effort to or that the tenant understands the law and he is doing an effort to accommodate.
Very good. There you go, Jonathan. Yes, and approaching the landlord politely can be done via Casa Portuguesa, of course, who we're here to talk about this evening. Now, we've been drawn into a lot of the technicalities here, understand?
Yes. I need now to be more specific about what you do and how can we help you.
Absolutely,
okay?
Absolutely. And what's it going to cost us, Gilda, as well?
Okay, so to find a property to rent, as I told you, we can send you some links. We can advise you on the places according to your wishes, the things that you like, your requirements, and we can negotiate the rental agreement with the landlords. We can send you photos. We can send you a report, a little report about the area and about the conservation of the house. We can take videos and audios about the noise.
Really?
And we take care of the utilities afterwards.
That's very good to know.
Yes.
Okay, all
we
right.
take care of the utilities. All these services for the rental agreement are 950 plus VAT.
Yes. Okay.
Okay. Of course, that if we need to go to Bragança, we need to charge the displacement because it's very far away from everything. Then to buy a property, the service are almost the same, but the negotiation, of course, needs to be a little bit more harder. The responsibility is different. So we charge more. It's 2,500 euros plus VAT, and also we take care of the utilities also, and we have Daniel that take cares of the legal part, but then he has his prices aside that depends on the status of the house and the place, the localization of the house, and also the value of the house. Aside, we can provide the service of engineering reports, and that value also depends of the house. But it's something that if you want to buy a house and feel secure of what you are buying, we can also provide you that service.
Excellent. And that's what people are paying for here, isn't it? Is the reassurance and the security and certainty. Some people you might work with, if people are trawling social media and the internet, and they have promises of help from people. The way you do it, Gilda, is you've not got a vested interest in the person renting, as in the landlord's side or the seller. You're working entirely for the person who wants to rent or wants to buy, for your client. You're not you're not doing a commission split or anything like that.
That's the difference.
Yes, tell us about that. Tell us about that.
That is the difference of Casa Portuguesa from other agencies.
Yes,
because we are focused on the client, and our money and what we survive on is what our client pays us for the independence, and we are here to serve our clients.
Yes.
Our other agencies, they just want, okay, they can help the clients, but they will try to sell their products, which is fair, of course, but ours, it's a different model.
Yes.
We focus on the client, and we go like everywhere, and we try to find what the client wants and what will fit the client and just make him happy.
And that's an important point to make, working entirely in the interests of your client, rather than being swayed by any commissions elsewhere. So that's great. That's good to know. I think that's an important point to have been made, and a good point to end the recording for now and allow people to ask their more personal and private questions that they don't want on the internet necessarily, unless there is anything we've missed that you've been desperate to say, Daniel or Gilda, that you would like included. Now, I'll go to you first, Daniel.
Well, I think it was the majority of it was covered, and Gilda now explained the core business of Casa Portuguesa, and this is to do a non-behazed, non-pressured by any commissions search of a property to people that need it. So I think it's a added value service that will avoid a lot of headaches, especially once you're moving, because moving from one country to any other country is a really substantial life-changing event. And the streamline process, or if you want to streamline the process and you hire the right professionals, as you'll find in Casa Portuguesa, this will make the experience quite enjoyable. So I think that's the added value on that.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Daniel. Gilda, last word to you.
Well, I hope we can help you in any way. We'll be here for you if you need our help, and you can trust us.
Yes. Okay. Lots of people, I'm sure, are already looking forward to working with you. Find Casa Portuguesa, find EI and Daniel at Reis Pellicano in the Expats Portugal Business Directory, folks. And we will close the recording now and go to more individual questions, which, of course, you can do if you sign up for the webinar each week. You can be here for what is going to be the after party now. Thank you very much for tuning in.